Professor Desmond Duncan, who's our moderator for today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris and Victor, for sponsoring this afternoon's event. Welcome to your forum. You've requested this event, and the student government, the administrators, the faculty and staff, and the community has reacted in response to your request. Today's forum will be conducted in the pursuit of knowledge and understanding. And your forum will be student-centered in its scope and learning-centered in its focus. The catastrophic events of last Tuesday, September 11, 2001, have the nation and the world spellbound. This has raised many of the who, what, when, where, why, and how questions, and have continued to cause many emotional swings in our lives. In order to respond to many of these concerns, today's panel is comprised of experts from various disciplines. Our first speaker, Dr. Judy Adelson, is from psychology. Ms. Sophia Khan, who will explain to us the difference between Islam and terrorism, is from the community. Professor John Scalaro is from humanities. Ms. Bliss Thompson is a counselor assigned to international students. Dr. Stan Melnick is from political science. Professor Jack Chambliss is from economics. Thank you, Chris and Victor, for sponsoring this afternoon's event. Thank you very much for agreeing to serve. Each panelist will have 3 minutes to address today's topic from the perspective of their discipline and area of expertise. Then questions will be accepted from you, the audience. There are index cards that are available in which you may submit your questions. Please make your questions brief and direct and maintain a learning-centered focus. We want to address as many issues and concerns within this hour. We will commence with Dr. Judy Adelson.
Thanks. I'm Dr. Adelson. I'm a psychologist, and I think the first thing I'd like to share with everyone is that all of your feelings are okay. It's what we do with them that counts. All the feelings that we have following the events of September 11th are normal. We can feel hopeless, panicky, anxious, full of shock, rage, anger, bitterness, despair. We can also feel connected to other people. We saw an outpouring of generosity. We saw an outpouring of community with other folks. Thank you. So all of those feelings are okay, every single one of them. It's what you do with them that counts. If you feel uncontrollable rage, obviously the feeling is very important. How you act on it is also important. It's not okay to hurt other people. It is okay to go for a jog or a run. Please ask for help. This is a time of high stress for many people, and it's quite normal to ask for help. It's really appropriate. The best thing that you can do for yourself is to talk about your feelings. Talk about what's going on for you. If you can't talk about it, write about it. Start a journal. Paint, draw, anything to get the feelings out of your body. That's what's the most important thing. Share it with other people, share it in a journal, just get the feelings out of your body. Also, be very good to yourself. With all of these feelings, the rage, the anger, the uncertainty, the fear, the hopelessness, it's really important to get adequate sleep, a healthy diet, good exercise, and to stay away from drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol can only exacerbate any negative feelings you might have. It's normal to feel mood swings, and one should feel prepared for mood swings. And not just in the days following the event, but even 2-3 weeks down the line, even a few months down the line. Irritability is also a big sign that we see. And beware of delayed reactions. You might say, I'm fine right now, and find 3 months from now that you're having some of these feelings. That's all normal. It's important to get back to your routine as quickly as possible. This will provide a sense of normalcy in your life. Also important is to avoid any major life decisions right now. Things aren't very stable, so avoid changing your entire life. If these intense feelings last longer than 2 or 3 weeks, it would be appropriate to seek professional help, to seek psychological counseling. And today until 6 p.m. in the Student Services Building, room 110, members of the Allen Group are available for you to talk to about counseling. For kids, what's the most important thing is to be there for them. Answer their questions appropriately and be physical with them. Reassure them, touch them, hug them. Kids are going to regress right now. They're going to feel anxious. They might start wetting the bed again. You'll see childish behaviors you thought they had outgrown. It's okay. That's normal. They can't verbalize their feelings the way that adults can, so they act it out through things like wetting the bed. That's fine and appropriate and normal. Reassure them, hug them, and provide a little more safety and security. Finally, the thing to watch out for at the end is post-traumatic stress disorder. And there are several symptoms of that, and they're on handouts that you'll have on the way out. And once you notice some of those symptoms, then it's appropriate to go get help. So above all your feelings are okay, what you do with them counts, and get them out of your body as quickly as possible. Talk to each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Judelson. Ms. Sophia Khan.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Which is the first verse means, I start in the name of Allah, who is beneficial and merciful. The second one is our greetings from one Muslim to another, which means peace be upon you. So I'm here, and I'm very glad and I'm proud to be invited here today to talk to all of you. I am a Muslim, and I feel very proud and fortunate that I was born in this religion. This is how I dress. I always wear my scarf when I'm going out. It gives me confidence and courage. As a real estate professional, I meet a lot of people in many different backgrounds and from different walks of life. But no matter where they are from and who they are, they will always remember me the way I am. And if I was to change myself for any reason, for example, what happened recently, a lot of my associates at the office were very concerned for me, and as I went into the office that morning, and none of us knew what was happening, we just went in, and all of a sudden we turned on the TV, and oh my goodness, everybody's like sitting there in shock. And the first thing that happened, they looked at me, 2 of them came and they hugged me. And everybody at that time was in tears and crying because we didn't know how to respond to the situation. And all they told me was, Sophia, be careful, be careful. We're worried for you. And I said, well, what would you want me to do? And they said, just don't drive out too much. Just take this scarf off. And I said, I said, I can't. And not that because they meant that I should take it off, it's because they were worried about me. I know them, we worked together for such a long time, and I knew that there was just me that they were concerned about. So I said, you know, what I can do is, because I do have everything set up at home, I will just take most of my work home and I will try to work from home. And this is what I did for the past week. I was like trying to avoid too many showings, going out too much. But then again, that was something that I thought was in the best interest for everyone and not to create any further conflict. And for me to go ahead and change, it seems like I would lose my identity. And it is very important for me to be comfortable with myself, because that's how I would be comfortable working with others. But let's come back to Islam. I just want to touch very, very briefly, because we have 3 minutes. Islam means peace, and all the followers of Islam are known as Muslims, which means those who submit. Muslims believe that Islam came into existence at the time of the creation of Adam. Like Judaism and Christianity, Islam believes that Abraham is the father of all religions. He preached that God was one, or God is one, and that Abraham is his messenger. Then along the line came many other prophets as time went on, because whenever humanity sunk to its lowest, God had to send a messenger to save the innocent and bring some law and order. Then Moses came along, and the Islamic name or the Arabic name for Moses is Musa, Kalam Allah, which means one who speaks to God. He was bestowed with the 10 Commandments, and he also preached that God is one, and I'm his messenger. Then it was time for Jesus to come, many, many centuries later. And Jesus was born of a miracle. God said, so be it, and it happened. Jesus' Islamic name or Arabic name is Isa, Ruh Allah. And Ruh Allah means the Spirit of God. His message also was the same: God is one, and I am his messenger, and the Spirit of God. He was taken away from earth because he was very young at that time, and he went away, with an unfinished message. The Quran and the Bible, they both state that Isa will come back to complete his teachings. And Islam acknowledges Isa alayhi salam, or Jesus, to be the Spirit of God and not the Son of God. That's where the difference between Islam and Christianity starts. Then approximately 500 years later, when again humanity was at the lowest, then came Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was born. As he was growing up, he used to wonder what he could do to bring dignity and order in those days, because there was a lot of womanizing going on, incest, drinking, and plunder, no respect for human beings. During one of his visits to the cave Hira, where he used to go often to meditate, Angel Gabriel revealed to him the first verse of the Quran. And over a period of many years, that is how verse by verse the Quran was compiled, and which is actually a continuation of the Torah and the Bible. Quran is not something just totally out of somewhere. It is a continuation, which builds on the messages of both the books and then further adds to rules and regulations such as rights of women, orphans, distribution of wealth among the family members, laws of marriage, prenuptials, divorces, etc., etc. Then there is the Quran, which is the law of book, and then we have the Hadith, which is the ways in which the Prophet implemented those laws in the daily lives. He lived by them. All Muslims live by the rules of the Quran, and they follow the pattern of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and try to lead their life as close to his example as possible. Muslims must believe in A, that Allah is one and the Prophet Muhammad is his messenger. Number 2, they must perform prayers 5 times a day. Before sunrise, in the afternoon, in the early evening, after sunset, and at night. They must believe in all the books, including the Torah and the Bible. They must believe in all angels and in the day of judgment. They believe in all prophets from Adam up to the last, which is the Prophet Muhammad. They must fast for that 1 month, which is the 9th month of the lunar calendar, from before sunrise to after sunset. They must give charity of at least 2.5% of their savings, which goes to the poor and the needy. They must perform Hajj at least once in their lifetime, if financially and physically capable. But then, they're good Muslims, those who mold their lives according to these laws and the teachings of Islam. And then there are the bad Muslims, those who mold and bend the religion to their own benefit. On September 11th, something very evil and horrible happened. Many innocent lives were taken and much destruction was caused. Unfortunately, this incident was created by those who manipulated the religion to benefit their own barbaric ideas and actions. Islam stands very, very firmly against terrorism. Quran and Hadith, they spell out very clearly that human life is sacred and that spilling blood of innocent people is a major sin and a major crime, a crime against humanity. Even in war, Muslim soldiers are not to kill women, children, and non-combatant men, regardless of their beliefs. Another way that these terrorists diverted from Islam's teaching was by committing suicide. This is considered a mortal sin by all Muslims. Only the Creator gives and takes life, and no human being is allowed to make that choice for themselves. To look at Islam as the root of last week's action is a mistake. Clearly, no Muslim will support the killing of innocent people at the hands of such suicidal maniacs. Why do we have this great need to link actions to a religion, or any religion for that reason? And I can't think of any religion that, be it Islam, Christianity, or Judaism, that preaches hate or puts people or innocent people in harm's way. It is only our minds that allow us to build walls around us and anything that is different. Instead of exploring our differences in a positive way, we shy away and we close the doors of communication. The only way, and with what little knowledge that I have, the way I see it moving forward is by all of us holding hands and helping each other towards a solution. We must break down the walls that we have built around us, and we must open the doors of communications. As Americans, it is our duty to find peaceful solution within our communities and to really, really understand each other. These platforms are an excellent way of doing and bringing about, our purpose. We can, together, we can start bridging the gap, and we can enjoy the differences that we have. Remember, different doesn't mean unhealthy. It is very, very healthy. The more the colors, the prettier the picture. I would like to add that I am very proud to be a part of this platform today. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to express my views, my Islamic views. We will all pray together for peace, prosperity, and unity. Ameen.
Thank you very much. Ms. Thompson.
I am the advisor to international students on Valencia's West Campus. There is an advisor on the East Campus as well. Valencia has an international student body population of between 834 and 859. It's my pleasure to be the responsible person for providing academic, immigration, social programming, community programming for that body of students. It's important that you understand that the families and the students who make the conscious choice to study in this country do so at an enormous sacrifice to themselves and their families. They deliberately leave their countries for whatever reason with the intent of coming to this country to study in what they believe is one of the best academic learning environments in the world. They do that free of choice, and when they do that, they bring with them an enormous amount of diversity. If you allow yourself the opportunity, then you can benefit from the differences that they bring. Differences is not a bad thing. Difference, in fact, is a welcome thing. It is through that difference that you are given the opportunity to learn and to grow. And by eliminating or shutting yourself out from the experiences that come with all of the international students that are at Valencia, you stifle your growth. I would encourage you to be welcoming, to be receptive, to be open to new experiences that each of these students can bring to you. There are approximately 112 countries represented on this campus alone. We have on this campus approximately 500 students, and each of them brings with them a uniqueness that you may not necessarily don't, but that you may not know. By allowing yourself to become friends with these individuals, then you broaden your worldly experience, and Valencia as an institution also broadens its global appeal to all kinds of people from all walks of life with all kind of political, religious views. So I would encourage you to be open and to be receptive and to not make judgments based on people's political or religious affiliation, because you have religious and political affiliations also. Doesn't mean that they're wrong to be different, they are simply different. There is an appreciation in difference, and all of what the international students bring to you allow you to be a more complete human, if you will, a more sensitive person, if you will. It is an opportunity right now for you to reach out to those students and to welcome them, to embrace them into your homes, into your conversations. Many of them are very fearful right now. They are fearful not necessarily because you have done anything to them, but because the perception is that if one person does something wrong, then everyone of that persuasion does something wrong as well. And we don't have the right, we don't have the any kind of right, I'll leave it at that, to bestow that kind of impact on somebody else's life. So I would encourage you to use this as an opportunity to grow and to learn and to open your arms and your hearts to many of the folks who simply look like someone that we might not trust. And so you vandalize, and I've had reports of vandalism. I've had reports of people being fearful because of how they're treated. And Valencia is a welcoming institution. Part of the mission of the community college is to be open to the community. That is the mission of the community college. So I would encourage you to embrace the mission of the community college and to employ it daily, regularly. And that's really as much as I need to say right now. I'll respond to any questions as we proceed.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thompson. Professor Scalaro from Humanities.
Okay, thank you so much. My students know me as Ringo Starr. And I want to compliment you for being here today. I am supremely pleased at the response I see in front of me and welcome you to this dialogue on such a fundamentally important issue. I'm conflicted at this point because I have an awful lot to say, as I'm sure my colleagues do as well. So I'm going to separate what I have to say into two parts and probably postpone the part, as you did, Bliss, until later, the academic side or the evaluative side until later. I'd like to stay more on the personal level first. I believe most of us are keenly aware of the degree of scapegoating and negative transference going on within the United States of America at this time. To me, the only proper response to that, based, as I think it should be, in the principle of reason and respect for one another, is absolute zero tolerance. I can tell you what I mean by that more by quoting a section of an article my wife, Anna, recently wrote and submitted to the Orlando Sentinel for publication. It will be published very soon. The title of her article is In Defense of Brown-Skinned Women and Americans. She says, "Why am I made to feel scared living in Orlando at this time? I am an educated woman and am comfortable in any social arena. Yet my existence right now seems to rest solely on my skin color." She is a woman of Indian descent. "I've just returned from work and was visibly shaken because I happened to be driving behind an open pickup truck with 4 white males seated in the flatbed. They were talking among themselves until they noticed me while at a stoplight. Then one of them pointed directly, arm outstretched, at me, and the others turned and glared at me. They did this continuously for the next 3 or 4 very long miles until I turned off onto another street. As recently as last Saturday, September 15th, I have been the object of strong glares during my shopping trips to Publix and the Florida Mall, all from white males. I've always been a Christian," she says. "Muslims, like members of other religions, come in all colors, shapes, and sizes. Is the intent of these people to wipe out the brown-skinned ones first, then go after the others? Is this what we call the American version of ethnic cleansing?" And then I would like to quote from an article I read in Tuesday's Orlando Sentinel, written by a 17-year-old, Farheen Pavez, Muslim. He says, "We all should learn more about one another before judging harshly. Let us all try to establish peace among our nation's citizens, as well as the rest of the world, by eliminating all forms of discrimination. Discrimination is the foundation of hate. Ignorance leads to hate, which leads to war. Unity leads to brotherhood, which in turn leads to peace, love, and happiness." So the degree of scapegoating going on in this country at this time is, to me, absolutely alarming and totally unacceptable. And I believe the only posture in conjunction with that particular disease, if you want to call it, or venom spewed from the mouth of Americans, is a zero-tolerance posture at this point. So the personal side is very important. I have other stuff relative to the issues that are certainly more global in scope and international in scope that I would like to address based on whatever questions are posed by the audience later. But I think this very personal side is extremely important to focus on at this time. And you know, to me, it doesn't matter what the percentage of incidents are in the community, whether it's the Orlando community or in the broader American community. To me, one act of racism, one act of discrimination, one act of intolerance is too much. Thank you.
Dr. Stan Melnick from Political Science.
I'd like to mention that this incident, this terrorism incident, is having an effect on domestic politics and how our politicians react. In a positive sense, there's no more division between the Democrat and Republican parties, that people are pulling together, and that we should unite. No matter, we have great numbers of people from all over the world and that this event that took place took lives of people from India, from England, and many other countries, and that the whole world was hurt by this event. It was a crime upon humanity that was done. It wasn't. And that terrorism is a common factor in the world today. It is a tool of groups, both nation states and stateless groups, attempting to gain publicity for their cause, achieving statehood, or to disrupt normal processes within established nations of particular political ends. And terrorism has struck all over the world. There's no room for it. Maybe now all the nations of the world will see this and will work together. It is our hope that that in fact is the case. That's all. I have a lot of other stuff to say, but that'll be a beginning.
Thank you, Dr. Melnick. Professor Chambliss, economics.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all of you for being here. When I heard Valencia had a car show also at this time, I was afraid we might have about 10 people in the stands, given the priorities of people from time to time. Before I begin with my own thoughts, I'd like to share with you a quote from a former American president. "Freedom is the unalienable right of all of God's children. It's so precious, yet freedom is not something that can be touched, heard, seen, or smelled. It surrounds us, and if it were not present, as accustomed to it as we are, we would be alarmed, overwhelmed by outrage, or perhaps struck by a sense of being smothered. The air we breathe is also invisible and taken for granted, yet if it is denied even for a few seconds, we realize instantly how much it means to us. Well, so too with freedom. Freedom is not created by government, nor is it a gift from those in political power. It is, in fact, secured more than anything else by those limitations that are placed on those in government." I've been asked by many people, especially students, whether the U.S. economy is going to go into a recession as a result of the events that took place last week. This is a fair question. Since I am an economist and Valencia pays me whether my answer is right or wrong, I never hesitate to answer the question. The answer is yes and yes. The economy was perilously close to being in a recession at the time the attack took place. If you've been following the news, we're seeing 30,000 layoffs at Boeing, thousands of people laid off in the airline industry. You can expect that to continue. You can expect more business closings, a rising unemployment rate, and probably our first recession in the last 10 years. So that's bad news. However, that short-term recession will pale in comparison, I'm afraid, to the longer-term recession that is on the way. And that is a recession of liberty in the American landscape. Thomas Jefferson once said, "The inevitable progression of things is for liberty to yield and for government to gain." 150 years later, Adolf Hitler said, "The greatest gift to rulers is that men don't think." Sadly, both are going to be proven to be right as events unfold. For those of you who have been out rushing to buy flags and have been singing the national anthem with a little more vigor, I'd like to ask you a question. Do you really know what the flag stands for? As you buy it, have you read the Constitution? Do you know the Gettysburg Address? Do you know about Normandy and Iwo Jima? I ask you this because we're facing the possibility of greater surveillance over our email, phone calls, library usage, internet usage. We're facing 3 to 4 hour waits at airports. We're facing a situation where maybe the government tells us we can't take carry-on bags on planes anymore. If you heard the news yesterday, maybe not even a nail clipper. $15 billion of your taxes is about to go to bail out an airline industry. The steel industry is now lining up, asking for increased tariffs on foreign trading partners in the name of national security so they can raise prices of steel on you. Does the concept of ethnic profiling bother you? Racial profiling seems to. You see, we have many times in our history asked the government to take on more power over our lives in the name of security. We did it when we destroyed the lives of the American Indian. We did it in the witch hunt for communists in the 1950s. We did it when we put the Japanese Americans in internment camps. We did it when we expanded the Vietnam War. So often we look to our government to provide us with security. But if you look at the long history of the role of government in people's lives, government continues to get bigger and bigger, and freedom incrementally goes away. I am deeply concerned that as you go out to buy these flags, that you are unaware of the very real possibility that your own government is going to do more over time to take away your freedom than the terrorists ever did. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for keeping your answers and your comments very student-centered and learning-centered. To Dr. Adelson, we have the first question. What is the best way to approach and explain this situation to our children?
It's a great question, and one that I am asked a lot. The answer, of course, is not uniform. It will depend upon the child's age, the child's level of understanding, the communication between the parents and the children. For very young children, it's okay to say something like, something bad happened. They can understand that. But to have them watch images would be too much. That would be too traumatic. Children right now are going to crave consistency, routine, and a lot of physical affection and emotional affection. So the best way to answer your kids is based on their questions and to keep it as age appropriate as possible. And only you as parents know what your children are capable of understanding. 9 and 10-year-olds can understand a little bit more about politics. But again, don't overwhelm your children. That can be too frightening and too confusing. The best thing really is just to keep them close to your heart, answer their questions as briefly and succinctly as possible, don't overload them, and keep their routines as normal as possible. Provide them with a lot more security, both emotional and physical right now.
Thank you very much. To Ms. Khan, I understand that what Osama is calling a jihad is not a jihad, but what do you think?
Jihad is a concept where it is only meant to take Islam and spread Islam. It has nothing to do with weapons. It has nothing to do with killing other people. There's different kinds of jihad. There's an internal jihad which is constantly going on. And no matter whether you are a Muslim or not a Muslim, everybody is going through the same feelings. You are constantly struggling to make yourself better, spiritually, financially, physically. And that is also a kind of jihad. Learning the right principles to live and work on them is the actual jihad. And it was never, ever, ever meant to be used to kill for no reason at all.
Thank you very much. To Ms. Thompson, what is going to happen if any student has to go to war or to the Army? The Army is a good place to go. Will I get my money back? I have to repeat classes.
Actually, that's a legitimate question, and I'm assuming you're talking about U.S. citizens and permanent residents. I can't speak on behalf of the college, but I would assume that there is a policy in place where if you must withdraw because of being called to military action, that you can withdraw and get a refund.
Thank you. To Professors Melnick, Chambliss, and Scalaro, should the CIA be more careful in selection of the people they train? They trained bin Laden in Afghanistan, you know. Who is worse enemy of the United States, Orthodox Christians or Islamic terrorists?
Whoa.
Well, pardon me, this is a very powerful question in itself. I believe the first part of the question is absolutely on target. I just heard from General Vinod Sehgal, who spoke here at the college this past January, for example. I am in email correspondence with him. He made the same point which Professor Duncan just read as part of the question, namely that the United States, through its CIA initiatives, had in fact funded Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan for more than just a couple weeks or something like that. So now bin Laden, if he is behind what we suspect, has thrown into our lap what we have given him. Mm-hmm. That is a very, very indictful comment of the United States policy in conjunction with such individuals as Osama bin Laden. I think that maybe such a point cannot be denied. As far as who is to blame, meaning are the terrorists as much to blame as Christian fundamentalists, I think I would prefer at that point to reference, just by paraphrase, a point made by Sehgal in a paper he had forwarded me called Dealing with the Afghanistan-Pakistan Cauldron, the Global Perspective. This was a paper he presented in India last August, nonetheless, and it is so on target, it is absolutely startling. Namely, his point is that all fundamentalism, despite its form, is dangerous. So we cannot target only Islamic fundamentalism, which is a reality. We already see the ugly head of that extreme form of Islam raise its head, and even Muslims will deny that it has anything to do with true Islam. And that's a point worth making. On the other hand, I have always been bothered by the Jerry Falwells of the United States, the Robertsons, and you already know what Jerry Falwell retracted, okay? If you're listening to the news, and I play off of my colleague, Professor Chambliss's statements in terms of what we know or what we do not know as Americans, it is important to know the documents which are the foundation of this country and the values which are rooted in the principle of reason and respect for one another. I say somebody like Jerry Falwell has absolutely no respect for anybody, despite the fact that he hides behind the veil of religion, you see. So I think we have to pay attention to these kinds of things. I think fundamentalism, regardless of its form, it can even be political, is dangerous and should be avoided at all costs.
Thank you, Professor Scalaro. Dr. Melnick? Professor Chambliss?
With respect to the issue of the CIA, we have to keep in mind, I respectfully have to disagree with you to an extent on this. It was about 10, 11 years ago that the CIA was involved in Afghanistan after the Soviet Union expanded into Afghanistan in an attempt to spread the doctrine of communism that had already been taking place in Nicaragua and Angola and other places. So, as it turns out, it may have been misplaced faith that things would go well in Afghanistan, but 10, 11 years ago, when you guys were younger, these were freedom fighters attempting to fight off the insurgency of communism. Once the Afghan people gave the Soviet Union their version of the Vietnam War and they left, the American government really left Afghanistan in a lurch. We pulled out for the most part and left instability there with no clear guidance as to what the government was going to be. Now, he is right. We have to pick who we're going to help very, very carefully. And more importantly, the CIA over the last several years has moved more towards industrial espionage. They've moved more towards using technology instead of a human element in their undercover work. So I think there's going to have to be a shifting in their thought process on how they're going to go about gathering intelligence, especially when it comes to the fact that they are able to track financial, bank transactions and what have you, overseas, but the moment money comes in the United States of America, they're not allowed to do that. Now, I'm uncomfortable with where this might go once it comes in the United States of America, but there are some limitations that we have placed on the CIA. There have been budget cuts we have placed on the CIA, and now, in some respects, we're unfairly blaming them for not having enough intelligence on this organization. So I just wanted to add that to the comments on the role of the CIA at this point.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let me come back. The CIA has depended upon technology, and they've had a weakness in human assets. We have gone away from hiring humans as spies, and there's going to be a distinct need for hiring some additional spies to find out what's going on in the rest of the world. Unfortunately, the tendency is you don't go hire Christians to spy on people that are committing heinous crimes. You almost have to go out and hire those people, which is very distasteful to our society. And I think even a bigger worry that's already been mentioned is that in our haste to be secure, we're going to jump to give the CIA and other government institutions carte blanche to invade our privacy and our rights. And the terrorism will accomplish something through our own efforts. And that's a danger that we all have to watch out for. And as soon as there's a tendency to buy the flag, and the flag is a symbol of our rights, our right to freedom of speech and freedom of religion and freedom of press and the right to privacy. These are very precious things. When we give up our lives, in my generation in Vietnam, is for these very precious rights. And what I am afraid of, and has been touched upon already, is that in our haste to be secure, we're going to be giving up these rights. And we have to be very, very careful that doesn't happen.
Thank you very much. This question is directed to me, but since I'm not a psychologist, I will refer the question to Dr. Adelson. Professor Duncan, how are we supposed to win this war if we are fighting a way of thinking and not really opposing a certain country or a group of people?
It's a great question, and I think everyone on the panel has a great answer for it. This war is different than any war we've seen before because it does seem to be a war of ideology and not about a specific piece of land. I think, as has been mentioned here, one thing we can do is try and understand other people who seem to be different from us. Chances are they're probably much more similar than we think. We all have families, we all have children we love, we all have parents we love. Those are the similarities, those are the things that bind us together. And on a psychological level, it's important to understand how close we are and how similar we are to another rather than how different we are from one another. I don't know if that exactly answers the question because I feel it's more political than psychological. This isn't so much a psychological issue because we're dealing with political and religious beliefs. So that's the best answer I can give right now. Just focus on our similarities because they really are much more than our differences.
Thank you very much. Ms. Thompson, we have a practical question here for you.
Okay.
How would the INS respond to future Muslim immigrants?
Honestly, I don't know. I can give you some thoughts that I have on it, but I don't know for sure. I would suspect that there will be another revision to the Immigration and Naturalization Act that will once again have profound consequences on students or non-nationals who enter the country, how they enter the country, how long they stay in the country, where they go in the country, and even some countries that are going to be allowed in the U.S. But usually that comes about after the initial trauma has happened. So I would, and it goes through a lot of steps. So it has to get to the Congress, and Congress has to pass laws, and then we then enact them. We are still in the process of enacting parts of a law that went into effect in 1996. So it can sometimes take a long time. But I suspect that there will be fewer international students and other non-nationals entering the country, and that they will have to be much more clear about what their reason is for coming into the country and the limitations put on the number of time they can stay in the country.
Thank you very much. This is our last question, and we will reserve 1 minute each for the panelists to provide any closing comments if they so desire. Often, government intervention and regulation in the private enterprise causes ineffective and costly procedures. what would be the most capitalistic approach to improve such things as airline security?
Well, it's not going to be a very popular remark, but if we look around the United States of America, where you guys are most satisfied with goods and services, think about Federal Express compared to the United States Post Office.
Okay.
Think about private schools versus public schools. When's the last time you were in the Department of Motor Vehicles getting ready to get your license plate, or in the Division of Driver's Licenses, and you reached the conclusion, wow, what a wonderfully efficient organization this is? So here we have the not-for-profit Federal Aviation Administration that is largely in charge of airline safety. They're going to get paid whether planes crash or not. What's going to happen next, ladies and gentlemen, is they're going to go before Congress and testify that the problem really is that they just need more money. They need more regulations. They need to be able to interfere with us a little more often. I wonder about the possibility of doing away with the Federal Aviation Administration, putting out the contract for your safety in the hands of a for-profit organization who knows if they let planes crash, if they let them be hijacked, if people don't pay attention to the bags going on, they lose contracts, they lose profit, and they go out of business. So I would be in favor of the privatization of the Federal Aviation Administration, because government tends not to do those things very well, because government doesn't have to do them well. They know where to get money if they blow it, and that's out of your taxes.
Thank you, Professor Chambliss. Thank you. Professor Chambliss, I probably need to remind you that the security of the airports are privately controlled.
But it's overseen by the government.
Okay. 1 minute. Anyone, we can start. Since you're on the roll, Professor Chambliss, let's start with you.
I'd like to, respond to the where do we go from here and how we win this war. The biggest mistake you can make is to believe that the people that did this are irrational human beings. That is a huge mistake. Don't call them insane. Don't do that. Rational behavior, by definition, is when an individual considers the benefits and costs of their actions. The benefits that the people who did this get from what they did are enormous. They hate the United States of America. They hate what we stand for. The eradication of our country would be of enormous benefit to them. The costs, on the other hand, are very, very low. They can afford it, and they don't consider a second-best option as being viable. The only way you can change behavior, if you believe that behavior is bad, is either convince these people that the benefits they get from attacking us are not very great, or raise the cost substantially of future attacks. The policy of the United States of America has to be a prolonged war that many of you in our movie of the week culture are not going to want to listen to, because many of the victories you're not even going to know about. It's not going to be like Desert Storm. You're going to have to be patient. You're going to be diligent. You may hear about raids in apartment buildings in Seattle or in Guatemala to flush these people out. But if you care about your long-term security, if you don't want to spend next September 11th in your apartment looking up in the sky wondering if it's going to happen again, anything we have to do has to make sure that the next terrorist that decides to come to the United States of America considers the very high cost of dealing with a country that has worked far too hard to give us the liberty we have today. They need to open up the American history books and read about Valley Forge and read about Normandy. They need to read about what we did to try to win the Cold War. And they need to understand that there will be a high price to pay for doing this again, because I know I want my children to spend next September 11th and every September 11th after that playing outside, enjoying their families, and not living in fear anymore.
Thank you, Professor Chambliss. Dr. Melnick?
You have to remember that when we are going to war, we're not targeting just individuals of terrorist organizations, in which there are many of those. We're also going to have to go over after the countries that are sponsoring and harboring these terrorists. And that we are a sitting target here. We have many material things. And we have to go after and defend ourselves so this doesn't happen again. But we have to be very careful that we don't get into another Vietnam and Afghanistan, which would be in terms of land attacks. And we have to be very careful in terms of our intelligence in doing these raids, going after the bank accounts of these terrorists and tracking down the money trail. And I think it would be very dangerous if we get into many tank battles and send our services in Afghanistan. It's like God put all these rocks down in that country and you can't maneuver there. It's very easy to get lost. And I think we have to be very careful we don't end up with a second Afghanistan as the Russians ended up in getting in defeat. But we need to win. Thank you.
Professor Scolaro.
Well, this is a very complex situation in terms of advancing any kind of resolution. As an Italian-American, I probably would want to say to George Bush, if he were standing in front of me at this moment, piano, piano, go slow. Take your time. Americans are very impatient, as you know. We want the hamburger at McDonald's or Burger King in 15 seconds like that, and we are very distressed if we don't have it in our hand in 15 seconds. We must find a way to step away from such a pattern. I believe that one of the most important things we could do as a country is work toward much more of an inclusion of other nations beyond the borders of the United States who would, with us, take the initiative against terrorism. I think that takes time to do, and we're already finding nations such as Pakistan, who said, yes, we will do this, is now hesitating. So we need to really follow that through.
Thank you very much. Ms. Thompson and Dr. Judy, excuse us, we might have to skip you because of the time constraints. We'll give the last word to Ms. Khan.
Again, I would like to thank all of you, and if at any time either one of you want to come discuss anything, we would be very happy to sit with you one-to-one and go into details of whatever your questions. I know there must be a lot of questions, which sometimes you're not eager to ask at this time, but later on, as the time goes on, you may have some concerns. So just, we'll make ourselves available. And I hope whatever we discussed today has been of some benefit, and hopefully we will continue working towards our goals.
Thank you very much. You've been a great audience. I hope you've learned something today. And if you have any desire to have a future engagement in this type of forum, just let us know.